Hello. Let us start with some soft questions. Why can a manager tell us what to do and we cannot tell the manager or the CEO what to do? No joke, serious question. Why do managers have the power to decide how much we get paid, but workers cannot decide how much the manager gets paid? Wait, stay with me. Let us now move to some hard questions. Employers have the power to fire us without so much as asking us if we agree, but we do not have the power to fire our employers if we find them, inadequate or incompetent. Why is it like this? Stay with me, we'll find out. We are told that if we do not like our job or our managers or the company, we can resign and go to another company because, we have a free market for labor where workers can decide what is in their best interest, just like employers decide what is in their best interest. Is this story really true, and this free market really free, where power is equally distributed between workers and employers? Let's pump up the discomfort to the next level. Now, the hardest questions of them all. Why is the workplace organized like this, in the form of a pyramid where power trickles down from CEO to worker and not in any other way? I can almost feel your mind rushing to find answers. Let's see how our pulse is doing when we hear the last question. Why do we take these pyramids of power for granted and we do not even dare to challenge them? If you are still with me, it is time to see how we can answer these questions. Professor Richard Wolff has an entire YouTube channel dedicated to democracy at work. He has been talking about the subject for more than 10 years. I will not venture to repeat his arguments. Rather, I will give you some updates from the fight for democracy at work. I read 2 books to prepare for this video: Democratize Work, authored by 13 women, and Democracy at Work by Richard Wolff himself. From the politically impossible to the politically inevitable, taking action. The core of the problem: why do we have bosses? Why do we not elect them like we elect our politicians? Is as old as capitalism itself. Many revolts and strikes have happened and continue to happen today, often with bloody consequences, broken bones, broken promises, increasing frustration on the side of disaffected workers, employers getting angry, capitalists moving jobs overseas for cheaper labor or less taxes, governments being incapable of bringing peace, and so on. By workers, I do not mean just hand laborers who toiled at huge machines, conveyor belts, or in the mines or in the fields. I also mean office workers, analysts of all shapes, flavors, and titles, bookkeepers, computer programmers, pharmacists, frontline workers, backline workers, middle line workers, engineers, gig workers, clerks, and many more. It is very likely you are one of them. The promise of a better life with less work, easier work, more leisure, more free time, higher wages, more prosperity has failed for the vast majority of humans in the past 50 years. Robots and automation were supposed to save us from doing crappy work so we can have more free time. Instead, we work even more, doing often bullshit jobs that robots cannot yet touch. They are not that smart yet, but we do feel the yearning, the burning desire of capitalists to make those smart robots do as much work as possible so they don't rely on humans. If you ask them what humans are supposed to do when not even crappy jobs are available, those inventors and capitalists will just shrug their shoulders. It's not their job to fix the problem. It's a social problem. Let the government fix it. Let the so-called free market fix it. People will find something else to do on their own. Well, that ain't true, and it ain't happening. This is why, and also because of other problems with work, A group of 3,000 researchers from more than 700 universities have signed in 2020 a manifesto called Work, Democratize, Decommodify, Remediate. I also signed the manifesto, and you can sign it too at this link. The manifesto says that human health and the care of the most vulnerable cannot be governed by market forces alone. If we leave these things solely to the market, we run the risk of exacerbating inequalities to the point of forfeiting the very lives of the least advantaged. In other words, that free labor market I mentioned is not good for keeping workers healthy, is not good for decreasing inequality, is not good for maintaining dignity and fairness. The first solution is to democratize work. This idea goes very deep into our psyche. It challenges and shakes the deepest roots of our beliefs about how work is organized. Many believe the institution of work is a religion with unshakable grounds, where democracy cannot coexist with the demands of business. Democratizing work challenges head-on this belief because human beings are not one resource among many. Without labor investors, there would be no production, no services, no businesses at all. Just like capitalists invest their money and risk into a business, so the workers invest their feelings, dedication, time, skills. They risk their health, livelihood, dignity into the same business. The salary can never compensate workers for all their labor investments. In fact, what is the price of dignity? What is the price of mental health? Democratizing work simply states that each worker would need to have an equal voice and power of veto in the business and be considered an equal with the capital investor. This builds on the example of law in Germany, the Netherlands, and Scandinavia, where workers have co-determination in companies, meaning they are represented on the boards of directors. The second solution is to decommodify work. This means work must not be treated like a commodity. The labor market, where you and me go on LinkedIn or whatever website with jobs, must be drastically diminished. But then you ask, how will people find jobs? Who will give them work? One way to do this is with a job guarantee. Governments, together with civil groups, will guarantee jobs that pay well and are dignified. Jobs created to serve a social purpose, such as moving to a green economy. Not useless batshit jobs or bullshit jobs like stock market trader, Bitcoin advisor, or investment banker. The job guarantee will eliminate the misery of unemployment. The third solution is environmental remediation. It's a question of the survivor of life on Earth. If governments jump to save businesses from bankruptcy, so should business jump in to save democracy and save Earth for life. That's the manifesto in a nutshell. Since it was so successful being published in 43 newspapers, 27 languages, 36 countries around the world, these women expanded the manifesto into a book. Their ambition is nothing less than to reorganize the economy. This is probably the biggest ambition in the history of humans. I would say even bigger than building phallic rockets that take billionaires into orbit, but somehow always failing to leave them there. Why is this ambition so big? Work in capitalist democracies is a contradictory experience because capitalism and democracy are two different forms of government that distribute rights in dramatically different ways. Capitalism grants political rights, specifically the right to govern, to property owners, shareholders, while democracy grants political rights to all people based on the ethical commitment to recognize and treat each other as equals. Workers are the subjects of their corporate dictators. It's not me saying this. Well, it is me, but this is coming from a professional philosopher by the name of Elizabeth Anderson. We can escape this dictatorship by expanding democracy into the economy. The alternative is to drop democracy altogether from politics and civic life and let capitalism rule everything. Do you see that happening already all around you? Rich people and corporations buying politicians, corruption everywhere, people not voting anymore because they are so fed up with the system, apathy, cynicism, nihilism, and other cute emotions like these taking the reins in our brains, so we end up isolating ourselves from society. The strategy of divide and conquer, divide et impera, goes as far back as the Roman Empire and the ancient Greeks. Capitalism is very good at using this against us. Corporations are governed only by humans who contribute capital to them. However, the risk-taking by these people is extremely limited. That's why they are called a limited liability company. A worker risks her body, her mental health, her family life, her dignity. It's full risk for workers, but limited risk for capitalists. If the business goes belly up, the capitalist goes laughing to another bank to borrow more money for another business, but never loses his mansion or private jets. No wonder in history there was always pushback against this arrangement. For example, the Philadelphia Declaration of 1944 recognizes the solemn obligation of the International Labour Organization to further among the nations the effective recognition of the right of collective bargaining. Collective bargaining is workers collaborating and uniting to negotiate with the capitalist class the conditions of work. You can thank bargaining for things you cannot imagine living without, well, depending where you live, such as the weekend, end of child labor, although this is creeping back, 40-hour work week, 8-hour workday, unemployment benefits, workers' compensation laws, employer-based health coverage, Family and Medical Leave Act. These were obtained with huge fights and had to be taken often by force from the hard clenched claws of the capitalist class. To this day, billionaires fight against unions, against higher salaries, against anything that makes work-life better. Workers who invest labor, not capital, are excluded from the governance of businesses. Democratizing work will fix this by making an equal sign between labor and capital. No business can survive without the labor of humans, not even a smart tech company who makes robots that make pizza. Some human designed those robots, and probably that human sleeps well at night. We will never know. Once we have the equal sign between labor and capital, the Pandora box opens. Workers will get a vote and a voice to decide what should be produced, what service should be provided, who should benefit from them, how are they manufactured and where, how can effort be fairly distributed, and who should be elected as CEO. Different designs for democracy at work have already been used and experimented. Worker councils in many European countries. Similar to boards of directors, these councils function as one of the chambers in a two-chamber parliament at the workplace. This is the government structure of the bicameral firm in the proposal from Isabel Ferreras. Employees are elected democratically and they can vote on anything important with the same power as the capital investors. To avoid corruption, favoritism, popularity contests, charisma contests, smart rules can be designed to control for these human shortcomings. One idea that I sometimes talk about is qualified random selection. Workers deliberate and make a list with qualities and skills that are important for their managers. People interested in being considered for management positions put up their names in a ballot and workers validate if the candidate qualifies for the list of qualities and skills. In the next step, a random manager is selected for a limited term. After the term is up, workers either repeat the process to select another manager or vote to keep the current manager if the results were satisfactory. Consensus, transparency, democracy. Rest assured, there are answers to all objections to this idea, but I will save them for another video. We can now move on to the other types of democracies at work. Richard Wolff talks about three kinds of democratic companies. Worker-owned companies are companies fully owned by their workers, sometimes called ESOPs. Worker-managed companies are companies where the workers manage themselves independently from the capitalist class. Cooperatives are businesses where people get together for an economic purpose. They can own together, like farming cooperatives. They can purchase something together. They can produce something together, all for a mutual benefit. Cooperatives can hire workers, managers, or do the work themselves. In all these forms, the decisions are taken democratically on the principle of one person, one vote. When we distribute power according to the number of people, not according to how much money an investor puts into a company, the effect is staggering. We will actually have the courage to speak up. We will not be afraid to contradict a manager or criticize an executive for some decisions, because they will be accountable to us. They will report to us. Democracy at work emancipates our minds, our hearts, and our souls. With democracy, we can be truer to ourselves because fear and anxiety will vanish. There will be no more catatonic team meetings where nobody dares to say anything meaningful about how they feel at work, how much they care or do not care about their job. Honesty and critical thinking expressed openly matter a lot in democracy. Corporate culture, which is, let us be frank here, how we are told to speak at work, what words are okay, what words are not okay, who are we not allowed to criticize, how we must behave, what clothes are okay to wear, what we must tell the world our company is about, even if that is a white lie, how meetings are conducted, how we must participate in virtue signaling, charity events because the company suggests it is good when they actually mean you better go or you will miss that promotion, and I think you know what I mean. Democracy has this funny way of shaping culture. Yes, democracy, but I have to eat too. I cannot eat democracy, some might say. Democratize firms. Why and how? Okay, let's talk about money. The American Revolution said no representation without taxation, meaning you gotta pay some taxes if you want to be represented in government. Okay, fine. We have that, more or less. On the same principle, we should have no production at work without representation in decisions. Meaning, if workers are expected to produce something, they ought to have a say in what is going on at work. Stay with me, because this is hugely important and radical. The salary will stop being a price that capitalists pay for the worker's time. The salary will be a share of the value produced by the worker. The entire value produced at work will be shared among the workers. The capitalist class cannot take the lion's share of that value in the form of profit and run away with it. The entire value stays in the business and is shared by those who create it. This is how democracy at work will pay for your food, for your house, for your life, for your dreams. No more billionaires taking your work and put it into yet another shiny mansion or another dozen luxury cars. Democratizing work also increases collective intelligence. A democratized organization will have access to a greater diversity of information, points of view, and skill sets at all levels. Particularly at the top, its capability for making good decisions would be strengthened considerably, likely balancing any potential costs in conflict and time. Better informed decisions usually translate into better economic performance and more prosperity. If the veil of secrecy is lifted and workers simply know more what is happening at work, at all levels, especially at the top, the gaps between salaries will drop. Domination and discrimination will diminish or even disappear. Social justice and resilience in economic crisis would get a big boost. Social justice? Such an abstract phrase. What does it mean? Resilience? I'm resilient. I live through Canadian dry winters and humid summers. Social justice is about as much fairness for as many humans as possible. It's about not leaving behind frontline workers, unfortunate families, while few privileged humans gobble up huge wealth. Resilience is about quick recovery after shock. It's about keeping your health and your identity intact during crisis. Democratizing work has a positive impact on environment and public health. If you had power as a worker, would you vote to use a technology that pollutes and destroys the environment but increases profit? What if these were not the only alternatives, profit versus bankruptcy, bad technology versus environment? What if workers created better alternatives, prosperity and clean technologies? Greenwashing alert to keep us on track. Pretending to make green products while you are still doing capitalism is another monstrous lie. Perhaps adding to the climate disaster should become a serious crime that is prosecuted. Democracy at work can protect us from this lie. Equal dignity for all citizens means equal voice at work. A democratic society is one in which all individuals have equal dignity and an equal voice, where one's voice can be heard by others and will not be silenced without good reason. Ideally, you and me should be able to both live and work with dignity. This principle is so important that one country, namely Germany, has decided to put it in its constitution at Article 1, which reads, "Human dignity shall be inviolable. To respect and protect it shall be the duty of all state authority." Immediately after this, Articles 2, 3, 4 of the German Constitution talks about freedoms, because freedoms and dignity are flowing from each other. Dignity is the quality of being worthy of esteem and respect. This quality functions when individuals have mutually assured freedoms. Nobody can be free without the relation to society, contrary to what many libertarians suggest. At work, we have one-sided dependence. Employers have more freedoms than workers. Workers are afraid for losing their jobs or their wages. Employers, namely the capitalist class, have no such fears. That is why speaking up at work is meaningless if nobody listens to you or if you do not make yourself understood. The purpose of democracy at work is to allow individual voices to be expressed. Anything less is an assault on their equal dignity. Here's an echo from history. On March 18, 1968, only a few weeks before his assassination, Martin Luther King spoke to a movement of African American sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, who worked in deplorable, segregated conditions. He told them,
"One day our society must come to see this. One day our society will come to respect the sanitation worker if it is to survive, for the person who picks up our garbage as in the final analysis is as significant as the physician, for if he doesn't do his job, disease is rampant. All labor has dignity."
the voices of workers deserve real freedom, independent from corporate culture that is designed to protect the brand of the business. The hierarchies we have at work are deeply against democratic learning. Because power is so unbalanced, communication is distorted. Bosses hear only the good news. They rarely know exactly what is going on at all levels in the pyramid, because secrecy is a built-in feature of hierarchical power. Power cannot survive without secrets. You might say bosses cannot know everything. They are not supercomputers. To which I say, exactly. That is the problem with privileged information, privileged decisions, privileged power. They are distorted, incomplete, unchecked, possibly flawed, because they are not shared, because they are not democratized. Democratizing work to reverse increasing inequalities. Today, not a single country has achieved gender equality, and according to the latest Global Gender Gap report, gender parity will not be achieved for 135 more years. Violence against women increased tremendously. In France, domestic violence increased 32% in just 1 week of the lockdown period. United Nations estimates similar increases around the world. Women continued to carry the workload of unpaid care for children and family, leaving them with less time and energy to focus on paid work or careers or aspirations. Democracy is based on the principle that all people are equal regardless of their identity and that everyone ought to have an equal voice in decisions. If democracy is central to the well-being of our societies, why are firms, which are the main engines of our economies and deeply embedded in social life, still exempt from applying basic democratic principles to their governance? Women should be better represented in decision-making positions. If companies use the qualified random selection model, for example, workers can ensure they have an equal number of men and women on candidate lists. Qualities and skills for management positions cannot have a justification based on gender. There's nothing in nature, in science, that proves men are better managers. Only the culture of patriarchy claims men are better at managing people and businesses. I will not even begin to explain how wrong this is. Dual majorities for firm governments. Let's look again at the government of companies. In Germany, by law, some corporations have co-determination, meaning half of the board members are worker representatives. The problem with this arrangement is that they are representatives. On the board of directors, where we have both representatives from the capitalist class and the workers, the principle is one person, one vote. In reality, we could have 10,000 workers, 100,000 workers, and maybe 100 capitalists who could be nested and hidden in layers upon layers of private equity funds, shrouded in secrecy, where the true owners are not known to the public. Because guess what? They do not want to be held accountable. They are afraid of the workers' wrath and pitchforks. Is this a democracy? I don't think so. Workers still do not have equal voice with the capitalists. This is why, perhaps, these models that try to find a compromise with the capitalist class do not really work, because they are not a full democracy. They are a half-baked attempt at democracy where workers do not really win and capitalists still get their way. Are these models better than nothing? Definitely yes. In my humble opinion, the capitalist class should have precisely one vote per capitalist to be truly equal with workers. Let me say that slower, in other words, so all capitalists can understand. If you are Elon Reeve Musk, our favorite billionaire to pick on these days, you will have one vote at Tesla, just like one of your assembly line workers will have one vote. Is it clear, Elon? Decommodifying work, the power of a job guarantee. I spoke about how work without democracy is a toxic dynamic that chips away from our souls. We can end this with a job guarantee that is a government-funded but locally administered public option for good jobs that would pay at least $25 per hour today. It is an employment safety net that creates opportunities for the unemployed in long neglected areas of public purpose, such as healthcare, community renewal, and environmental remediation. The job guarantee decommodifies work, meaning job seekers will not be treated like an object on eBay where buyers bid on the price. Employment would not depend exclusively on how profitable it is to hire people. The profit motive of capitalists will not matter when workers are hired. The job guarantee also protects workers from abuse. You know very well the scandals about the working conditions at Tesla, at Amazon, and at so many other places where capitalists try to squeeze every ounce of effort out of workers. When workers are guaranteed a good-paying, decent job, they will tell Amazon to shove up their pneumatic tubes that warehouse job. The job guarantee establishes an uncompromising labor standard for all jobs in the economy, offering dignified employment at family-sustaining wages to anyone who shows up at the employment office looking for work. With this idea, unemployment is history. We will stop seeing headlines like these. Politicians will not be able to brag about how many jobs they created, because anyone who wants a job will have a job, but not a bullshit job, not a batshit job. Here are some of the successful job guarantee programs, not all universal, that have already been done in recent history. They can all serve as inspiration. Sustaining life on this planet. Is democratizing work enough? Is decommodifying work enough? There's tension between environmental activists and some labor movements. When environmental activists want to shut down a coal mine or an oil refinery, that would immediately put the jobs of miners and oil rig workers into jeopardy. A miner has a family to feed, so does an oil rig worker. They risk their bodies and health every single day to survive. How can we take that away from them? Is that the fundamental dilemma? Or is it perhaps that these workers are also victims of the pollution generated by their work? As the coal miner and union organizer Jock Jablowski asked in West Virginia, what good is a union that reduces coal dust in the mines only to have miners and their families breathe pollutants in the air, drink pollutants in the water, and eat contaminated commodities? Here's where democracy at work comes to rescue across global supply chains. If the oil worker had power to challenge the CEO of his company, and all workers decided to stop extracting fossil fuels and move instead to building solar or wind power, that would have huge benefits for workers themselves, their livelihood, their health, and our health as well. This is why democracy is the ultimate source of positive power when it comes to deciding how companies should invest. Sustaining life on Earth is in stark contradiction with the profit motive in capitalism, which is eternally obsessed with growth at all costs. The huge work needed to fix the environment and change our economy cannot be done by private capitalist companies. By definition, it's against their true motivation. This work, therefore, can only be done with democratic means, by engaging all workers, all citizens, into decisions. Should we build a new oil rig here, or should we build a wind farm? Let's ask the people and see what they say. Should we cut down this forest and turn it into a monoculture for palm oil? Let's ask the people and see what they say. Should we let these guys decide the fate of humanity? I wonder what people have to say about it. Here's the punchline for a work that sustains life on Earth. Moving toward an ecologically sustainable society does not mean creating new kinds of work. However, it also means working less, shorter working hours, longer demand of the labor movement, give workers more time to spend as they will, while also reducing carbon emissions. Who would not like to work less for the greedy capitalist class and have more time to enjoy life? Working against an end, shifting gears for a new beginning. Breaking news for capitalists: And good news for those who want to start a new business. If we want to decarbonize our economies by 2050 to keep life on Earth, business operations in many industries will have to shut down, while many others will have to change drastically their manufacturing processes. At the same time, many new businesses will need to be launched and developed. My suggestion for startups is to always have in mind democracy at work. Instead of building a business around the hierarchy of power, build a business around democratic principles, one human, one voice. Make it a society of workers with equal participation, both in ownership and in dignity. Certainly, you can have managers as long as they are elected and accountable to those who elected them. Epilogue. If you hear for the first time about democracy at work, this may be probably one of the most important days of your life. After you dig deeper into this idea, it will be quite difficult to continue to support the philosophy of capitalism. The new economy that will emerge when work is fully democratized will transform the lives of all humans for the better. I would like to thank my Patreons for helping me stay independent and ad-free. If you can support this channel, you can learn how to do just that by visiting my Patreon page at patreon.com/Vlad Bunea. The best and easiest way to support here on YouTube is by clicking on the subscribe button below and the notification bell. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it makes a big difference for the YouTube algorithm. Have a great week, everyone.